So, is it a victory for the protesters, political sleight of hand, or has the reality of a World Cup and Olympic Games to host forced the Brazilian government to move? In her first television address since the start of demonstrations a week ago, the Brazilian president, Dilma Rousseff, promised to improve services and crack down on corruption, as well as meeting the protest leaders. But will it be enough? Matt Fry is in Rio tonight. Matt.
Welcome to Rio, Krish. Well, as you can see, there's a bit of a storm brewing behind me. And of course, we've had the political storm for the last few days. Just remember, in exactly a year from now, this city and many others in this country are supposed to host the World Cup. Well, all week they've been hosting unprecedented demonstrations, violent demonstrations at times. And the anger, the public anger, has been abated to some extent, and I repeat, to some extent, because of the sweeping concessions announced by the President, Dilma Rousseff, last night in a television address. Brazil was meant to be showing off its best side in the year leading up to the World Cup. This was perhaps one of its worst sides, but also one that the majority of the demonstrators hadn't wanted. The object of their wrath, a car showroom, symbols of wealth have become targets in this week of demonstrations. This car dealership was close to one of Rio's most notorious favelas, the optimistically called City of God. The police are still out in force, sometimes excessively so. Their overreaction has inevitably caused a reaction amongst the crowds. Such as the viral and at times vicious nature of this week of insurrection, that even many of the demonstrators have been shocked by what the cocktail of disenchanted youth and digital media can deliver. No one was perhaps more taken aback than Brazil's president, Dilma Rousseff. Unlike in Turkey, these are not protests against the country's leader, more against the shortcomings of the political system.
I think so.
Last night, at prime time, she took to the airwaves with an address to the nation and promised sweeping concessions.
We will focus on building a system of public transportation. We will dedicate 100% of all profits to education. And we will bring thousands of doctors from abroad to expand our health system.
She also made the obvious point that the timing of these protests and the run-up to the World Cup just couldn't be worse.
I cannot refrain from mentioning this. Brazil is the only country that participated in all World Cups, and we have been world champion 5 times. We were always very well received everywhere we went. We need to return the same warm welcome now.
The next few days will show whether the government has lanced the boil of discontent. The size of these demonstrations has been unprecedented in Brazil's democracy. Ironically, they've been staged in large part by the very generation that has benefited from the country's astonishing growth. Success breeds expectations, but partial success breeds expectations mixed with frustration. In the process, Brazil has lost its legendary cool and perhaps much more. And of course, those expectations have been raised yet again by the concessions announced last night. And it'll be a real trick to make these things happen, especially when the economy here has actually been flatlining in the last 6 months.
So what's going to happen, Matt? More protests tonight?
Not so much in Rio. I think they're having a day off, mainly because of the concessions announced yesterday, but also because it's a weekend and they are, after all, Brazilians still at heart. So they're having a little bit of a breather. But there are demonstrations in other parts of the country. And, of course, on Monday, Krish, it could all kick off again if the demonstrators don't feel that the political process that has just been announced is actually working. And this will be very tricky because this is an unrest. People have called it the salad unrest because people have been using vinegar against the effects of tear gas. But it is a very mixed salad, and no particular salad leaf is in front and has been designated spokesman of this insurrection. Therefore, who's the government actually going to talk to? How are these concessions going to be driven home? And who's actually going to listen to what they have to say? So this is going to be very interesting in the next few days. But remember, unlike Turkey, this is not an uprising against President Rousseff. She is not nearly as divisive as the Turkish president was, and that is one of the great sort of positive things of this particular week of demonstrations that we've seen. And of course, they know that this is prime time, that the World Cup is round the corner, and after that, the Olympics. And by the way, the Pope is coming here in the next few weeks, so they better be on their best behaviour.
Matt Fry, thanks very much.